So in today's tutorial, we'll be learning how to make this style on the thumbnail. Okay, the only difference is that, please take note that the only difference is that this gown is going to be having a slit by the side of the skirt. So we'll be making the exact same style that we can see on the thumbnail, but it's going to have a slit in front, a side slit in front, okay, and that's at the skirt area. Every other detail is the same, so please stay tuned. I'll try to make this tutorial as simple and as easy as possible. Okay, so the first thing I want to do, I have my pattern paper. For the skirt part, we'll be using a waist of 35 inches. Then we'll be using a hip of 46 inches. Okay, and a length, a gown length. We're using a gown length of 58 inches. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is to fold my fabric. Now, since my hip is 46 inches, the hip I'm working with is 46 inches, I'll be dividing that by 4. And when I divide that by 4, I'm going to be getting 11.5 inches. And then plus my allowance, that if I'm using an allowance of 1.5 inches, that would give me 13 inches. So I need to fold 13 inches. I won't be folding 13 inches, I'll be folding 14 inches. Okay, and you will know why I'm folding 14 inches. So let's see if my paper can give me that. Okay, so see, my paper cannot give me 14 inches. My paper just gave me 13.5 inches. Okay, so I folded my paper into 2 and I just have 13.5 inches. Okay, my paper is not enough to give me 14 inches. So because of that, I'll just be adjusting my allowance to 1 inch. Okay, but for your fabric, you can decide to use more. Okay, but since I was not able to get enough paper, I'll be adjusting my allowance to 1 inch. Okay, so after folding your fabric into 2, fold the quantity you need. I've explained the quantity you need. The next thing you want to go ahead and do is to fold that 1 inch. Okay, so now this 1 inch is going to represent the slit allowance. Okay, of course you need to make we are making a side slit in front, so this is the slit allowance. So go ahead and fold the slit allowance, which is 1 inch, and you can see this is 1 inch I folded here. So the next thing we are going to do is to make ½ inch at the top of the paper, as so. So I've made ½ inch at the top of the paper. That's what we are going to do. So from this ½ inch, we are going ahead to mark our vertical measurements. Now please take note, for our upper part of the front piece, the under bust length is 13 inches. Let me write it so that you see. So the under bust length is 13 inches. Okay, at the beginning I showed us the full measurement. That's the measurement we are working with now. If you check that measurement that I sent, the under bust length is 13 inches and the waist length is 16 inches. Okay, so you can cross check that and see. So what I'm going to do is that 16 inches that I have as the waist length, okay, I'm going to subtract 1 from the waist length. Okay, please take note, I'll subtract 1 from the waist length. Now remember, our waist length is 16 inches. Like I say again, subtract 1 from it. So 16 minus 1 is going to be 15. Do you get? 16 minus 1 is 15. So I will place my tape from 15 on this ½ inch that I marked. Can you see what I'm doing? So place your tape on 15 inches. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm saying that this upper part is going to carry the, this is just, see, of course I'm marking a gown, so I'm assuming that I have my upper part. That is why I'm starting from 15 inches. This 15 inches is going to cover all the joinings. Of course, if I start from 16, by the time I join, I'm going to have shortages. So that's why I'm starting from 15 inches to cover all the joinings. So place your tape at 15 and then continue marking. So I place my tape on 15 and then I'll mark my hip. The hip length is 24 inches. I'm using 24 inches for the hip length. Then the next thing I will mark is the knee length. Okay, the knee length, when you mark the knee length when you are drafting a skirt, it helps you to get a better fit. Okay, so for the knee length, I'll be using a knee length of 36 inches. So I'm marking that out. And then the gown length, my paper is not enough to give me 58 inches for gown length, but let's assume we have the complete gown length. So I'll go ahead and mark these lines out so that you can see. Please don't forget, place your tape at 15 inches and then mark your hip length, which is 24 inches, 36 inches for knee length, and then we have gown length. So your gown length is 58 inches. If the gown length is 58 inches, you can add a seam allowance of 1.5 inches, okay, for the skirt part. So go ahead and draw. I'll use my long ruler to draw. So please do not forget to add seam allowance to the length of your dress. It's very important. Okay, so let me label it. This is my waist point, this is my hip line, and this is my knee length. I'm going to label as KL. So for my waist, the waist is 35 inches. Divide it by 4 and you have 8 3/4 inches, and I'll go ahead and mark, and then I'll mark 1 inch allowance. Remember, my paper is not enough, that's why I'm marking 1 inch allowance. But if you have enough fabric, you can go ahead and mark more than 1 inch allowance. The next thing I'll be marking is my hip circumference. The hip circumference is 46. Divided by 4, that will give me 11.5. And then plus 1 inch allowance, we have it as so. Now, what will I be marking at the knee length circumference? My hip circumference divided by 4 minus 1. So we had divided, when we divided the hip by 4, we got 11.5. So I'll subtract 1, which makes it 10.5. So that's what I'm going to put here. 10.5, I subtracted 1, I put 10.5, and I put my 1 inch allowance. That is what we have. Then at the length of your gown, go ahead and see subtract 1 inch and put here. So here we had 11.5, here we have 10.5, here we are going to have 9.5. Can you see that? So we have 9.5 plus 1 inch allowance, and there we go. So we are done with our marking. So we'll go ahead and connect, okay? So I'm going ahead to use my pattern ruler to connect the dots together. Okay, so you may be asking, am I not going to put that? Okay, so if you are working with lace fabric, it is not really necessary. Okay, if you are working with a lace fabric, okay, if you are working with a lace fabric, a dart is not really necessary, because sometimes it just kind of give it an awkward look. But if you are working with an Ankara fabric, you can go ahead and put your dart. But the main focus for the dart personally is for the upper part. You need it for the upper part. So once we have our princess dart bustiers for the upper part, it's not so compulsory for the lower part of the dress. Of course, except there are some exceptions to it though. But for this style, you are working with a lace fabric, it's okay if you do it without a dart on the skirt part. Okay, it's okay if you do it without a dart on the skirt part. But if you are working with an Ankara fabric, then you can go ahead and do a dart, of course, if it will make it look nice. Okay, so this is what we have. I've cut out the skirt part. Can you see that? So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm coming back to work on the front, okay? So for my back piece, can you see what I'm doing? Leave your zipper allowance area, okay, as so. Can you see that? Leave 2 inches for your zipper allowance area. Of course, we are going to still bring out the shape for the back. So this is 2 inches for the zipper allowance area. Do that on your fabric. Then the next thing we are going to be doing will be to draft out. Let me put this ruler here to secure it. Okay, so the next thing we are going to be doing will be to draft out the back area. Okay, what we are going to do now, we are going to extend these lines. We are going to extend these lines. If you watch my videos, you will discover that I always do butt contour at the back side of the dress. Okay, so our zipper allowance we are going to be using will be, you can use 1 1/4 inch. Okay, 1 1/4 inch. This is the zipper allowance. Okay, you can use 1 1/4 inch, you can use 1 1/2 inch. Okay, so let me use 1 1/2 inch for better illustration. So our zipper allowance we are going to be using will be 1 1/2 inch. Okay, this is what I've marked here, 1 1/2 inch. So on our hip, okay, on the hip area, we are going to be adding 1/2 inch to this 1 1/2 inch. So on the hip, we'll be marking 2 inches. Can you see that? On the hip, we'll be marking 2 inches. So this is just for butt ease, okay? It's for butt ease. So we have 1 1/2 inch on the waist. We have 2 inches on the hip. Then on the, from the down of the skirt, okay, you can decide, since it has a slit in front, there will be no need to give it another slit at the back, of course, except if you want to. Okay, so I'll not be giving this any slit at the back. So I'm going to, the same 1 1/2 inch I placed here, I'll come ahead and place it on the knee length, and then I'll just take it across. Okay, so please take note, there is extra 1/2 inch on the hip because of the hip, okay, because of the butt. Okay, so just take it as a butt allowance. It's a very simple way. This is a very simple way to contour your butt, because of course the female butt is not flat. Okay, that back area is not flat. Okay, you can see the curves at the back. Okay, so I'm going ahead to connect as so. I'll use my ruler and connect as so. So I've connected that part. I'll go ahead and connect to this part. You can see what I've done, and then of course that 1.5 inch will extend to the length, to the full length, and then go ahead and connect. You see what we have done? So having done this, you go ahead and cut. Okay, so go ahead and cut. You cut the sides. As you can see, you cut the sides the same shape, and go ahead and cut out this zipper side. Please don't forget to notch the side that is for the zipper area. Okay, you can label it zipper. Don't forget to notch or label it so that you will not confuse it. Remember that this back side does not have slit. If you do not label it, you are going to confuse. You may get confused. You may not know which side is for the hip or which side is for the zipper area. So please ensure to mark it, ensure to label it so that you know that this side is for the zipper and that side is for the hip side. Okay, so go ahead and cut. The next thing we want to do is to bring back our front piece. Okay, as you can see, I'm bringing back our front piece, and then we'll open it up. But before we open it up, please notch the center. Okay, open up this 1 inch, open up this 1 inch and notch the center. Okay, so notch the center so that you'll be properly guided. Okay, so after we've opened up the paper, okay, the next thing we are going to measure is usually good when it's a side slit. When it's a side slit, it's usually good if the slit is 4 inches away from the center. Okay, it's usually fine. You can decide to place it at whatever position you want. Whatever position you want is fine, okay? But a good position is 4 inches away from the center. Remember that we added 1 inch allowance for the slit allowance, okay? So, or for the slit area. So we are going to now relocate the 1 inch allowance, and we are going to put it here, okay? So this line that I'm marking bold like this is where we'll be taking our dart. So when you open your paper into two, you are going to be taking your dart 5 inches away from the center. Take note, we'll be taking our dart 5 inches away from the center. Another thing you should note when you are marking your dart or your slit is that please you mark it on the front piece. When we are creating this slit, create it on the good part of the fabric. Create it on the good part of your fabric, okay, so that you will not place it on the wrong position. If you create it on the bad side of the fabric, by the time you flip it over to the good side, it will change position, okay? So if this is the good side of your fabric, ensure to place the slit on the mark the slit on the good side of your fabric so that you maintain the same position. If you want it this side and you do it on the bad side, by the time you flip it over, the slit will now come to this side. Do you understand? So do it on the good part of the fabric so that the slit position will not change, okay? Okay, so remember that you place the slit 5 inches away from the center part, and that is what I have done. Okay, so I will go ahead and mark the same thing here, 5 inches away from this center. I'll go ahead and mark. And please take note that you can give your slit any shape you want, okay? You can make it straight. You can make the slit straight. You can even make it slanty. Okay, let me make it straight for you to see. So this is a straight slit. Okay, can you see that? This is a straight slit. You can decide to even make it slanty, okay? Let's assume you wanted to make it slanty. All you will do is you can shift it inside here by 1 inch if you want it slanty, and all is going to give you a beautiful result. If you want it slanty, can you see? It's still going to give you a very beautiful result. Okay, so this makes it start from this position and then brings it a little bit, slanty towards the center. So all is going to give you a beautiful result depending on what you want, okay? So when you've done this is your slit area, you go ahead and cut it out. You go ahead and use your scissors and cut out your slit, okay? So remember that from the center, we came to this side by 4 inches, and then this 1 inch that we added for our slit area, we have gone ahead to replace it here. All right, so that is that about that, okay? So with this, you should be able to cut your skirt comfortably. I hope this video is very simple enough. So I'll be showing us how to cut the upper part of our gown. Okay, so when you cut this open, when you slash this open, you can go ahead and cut your linings and turn your linings. When you turn your lining, just go ahead and hold this punch. Remember that the allowance on this side is 1 inch, 1 inch this side, 1 inch this side. You go ahead and hold that same allowance. By the time you are done stitching, your allowance must have reduced to about 3/4 inch on both sides. If you saw on 1/2 inch, it must have reduced to about 1/2 inch on both sides. You can go ahead and hold that 1/2 inch and then decide where you want to hold it and stop. So if you want your slit, whatever length you want your slit to be, if you want your slit length at maybe 15 inches or 18 inches, is optional, is left to you. Wherever you feel the slit is okay, you can just hold it up to that point, iron both seams open, iron it, use your hemming gum or whatever gum you use to secure it on both sides, and you have your slit in the center. It is very, very simple. So I hope you understand. If there's any question, please do to ask me in the comment section. I'll show you how to work on the upper part. Thank you.